Hi, it's Ian from the Postal Hub podcast.
And Marek from Last Mile Experts.
And we are the Last Mile Prophets. This is the last word on the last mile. Marek, we seem to talk about Poland a lot.
and it's not just because I'm Polish.
Well, what I wanted to ask you, before we got stuck into this discussion about the last mile in Poland, is it almost seems that Poland is a real battleground at the moment for various forces in e-commerce and the last mile. You've got the Chinese companies, you've got InPost, you've got Amazon, whatever Amazon's doing at the moment or likely to do with InPost, and you've got all the other carriers along with these growing PUDO networks at the same time. There's a lot happening in one market. Why is that?
I think a lot of things have come together, and I'm trying to think where I would start. But let's maybe start with e-commerce, because last mile basically is a function of the success and growth of e-commerce. So the incumbent e-commerce player, a company called Allegro, had an IPO that was hugely successful this year. So let's say it started with that. They've already been generating a lot of business in the market. At similar time, the Chinese, in the form of Alibaba, have become more and more active in terms of developing their own presence. And now it's been announced that Amazon is no longer mooted to be coming into the market. They've now formally announced they're coming. One little tweak, they didn't say when, but I think the announcement suggests it's going to be imminent. So everybody who is anybody in e-commerce is in the market. And the volumes, with a bit of help from COVID, are exploding. So that's the background to the battlefield, as it were, or the sort of battlefield analysis. Now, what has happened in the meantime, there have been a lot of very innovative developments, largely generated by InPost, who've also had an immensely successful IPO. In fact, a lot of people say it's sort of double or triple in terms of the valuation that they'd expect. So it's all happening. Probably the most important, if I were to choose one single thing, is that as a result of what InPost has been doing, Poland has become the biggest locker market in Europe, and arguably the second locker market behind China. So now I said a lot of things. I'm sure you got some questions.
No, this is good because we do talk about Poland quite a lot, but there is an interesting dynamic there which sets it apart from some other countries where, let's say, there might be one dominant carrier or a couple of dominant carriers, or there might not be out of home, or there might be a lot of out of home. So this for me is part of why it is an interesting market. But obviously the Polish people themselves must also have the money to throw around. Throw around sounds a little bit unkind, right? But if you don't have the money to spend on e-commerce, there's no e-commerce. There's no commerce at all.
But it's really good, Ian, that you made that point, because what often happens when you have a recession, when things are a little bit more difficult financially, people actually buy more on e-commerce because you can get a better deal. So whereas when you go to a physical store, you buy at the price that's on the label. On the internet, you usually find the best possible price. You have a lot of bargains, you have outlets, etc. So I would actually argue that difficult times of recession, the internet wins. And there's also, Ian, something very special now because of COVID. There are some people that have no choice, like it or hate it. They must buy online.
So let's talk about what you found in this latest report that's been put out by Last Mile Experts, or it's available from Last Mile Experts. I'll put a link to it down below if you want to find out more. The growth in the parcels market in Poland. Obviously, everybody's seen growth, but what would you say are some of the characteristics of the growth in the parcels market in Poland in the last 12 to 18 months?
It's been incredible, Ian. The market is now worth more than 10.7 billion Polish zlotys. For those who are not really into zlotys, divide by approximately 4.5 to get euros.
What's that? So what's that mean?
It's going to be what? It's going to be just over 2 billion.
Right.
But what's important is it's come from a very, very low base. We're predicting that it's going to have roughly almost 20% compound annual growth by 2023. So this market is really growing. But what's also interesting is what we discussed before. We've now got all the big players in the market. So we've got a market, let's be very honest, it's not one of the top three in Europe normally, but we've got everybody there. We've got the three A's, Amazon, Alibaba, Allegro. We've got pretty much all the carriers. We've got one of the strongest locker networks in the world. And wow, isn't it exciting?
So what's the deal, by the way? We did a video a couple of weeks ago, or not that long ago, about InPost's IPO, and 24 hours after we recorded that, InPost announced it was partnering with Amazon for Amazon's entry into Poland. Now, so two questions. What does it mean? And the second question is, has Amazon's imminent arrival, we've been saying imminent arrival for a while, has that been forcing the incumbents, or the carriers and the e-commerce players in Poland to up their game?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, Amazon's arrival is great news for InPost, because guess what? Only they have so many lockers. They have well over 10,000 machines. So I think it's good for them. It's going to be good for the last mile because it will mean more parcels. And also because Amazon is very demanding, and Amazon will be a catalyst for continuous improvement and change. But I think what is interesting and what has become very clear to me when we reviewed the data and looked at the report is the fact that the legacy players have got to change. So InPost came from nowhere, and it is now the market leader, both in terms of revenue and in terms of volume. And it was not anywhere close to that. In fact, this happened over the last year. And I think this is a real wake-up call for DPD particularly, which was the number one player, for DHL, for FedEx, for UPS. Because unless they get their act together, particularly in terms of out-of-home delivery, which is PUDOs and lockers, this process could continue. And that would be worrying.
In all those players that you just mentioned, you didn't mention Polish Post. And I seem to recall that the Post has got a sort of tentative deal, or whatever the word is, with DHL to share some parcel lockers. Mm-hmm. So the Post, I know it's a different political situation and a different regulatory situation with regard to how the Post interacts with the letters and all of that in Poland compared to other countries. But is the Post in a position to catch up? Or are they destined to become the carrier of last resort, as some other posts seem to have become?
I think they're in a very difficult situation because everything around the Post has become highly political. I don't particularly want to get into all of the details there, but I think to a degree the management, first of all, there have been a lot of management changes. There was an extremely strong team around about 2015 who were replaced. And there have been changes, a lot of, shall we say, political suggestions as to what the Post ought to be doing or ought not to be doing. And that has led to the fact, in my opinion, that the Post has stagnated. It is now one of the what I'd call legacy players.
Well, it becomes very difficult to make decisions when you're in that sort of political environment. And it's not necessarily through any fault of the management, but if you find that you're being second-guessed or directed by a higher authority, well, then it can be difficult to have continuity, isn't it?
And then, Ian, coming to your very good point about the lockers, yes, they are part of the Swipbox network. But as far as I recall, last time, in fact, we're going to have a report coming out on that soon on European PUDOs and lockers. But as far as I remember, 240 is the number, of which I think around about 40 are just Polish Post and the rest are shared. It could be even 50 are Polish Post. But hey, put that into perspective. If we've said that InPost has
10,000, yeah, it's a drop in the ocean compared to 10,000. Now, Marek, we've sort of talked about some of these big picture issues, but the report that you and the Last Mile Experts team have put together gets into some real detail. Marek, if people want to find out more about it, where should they go? I mean, I imagine we're going to put a link down below somewhere.
Absolutely. Well, there'll be a link here. They can check on LinkedIn or on the Last Mile Experts page. But we think this is really timely given what's happening. And we've already had quite a lot of interest. So we're looking forward to loads of people reading the report and getting a much better knowledge of the Polish market.
There you have it. So we'll put the link down below and you can click through there to have a look at what's on offer from Last Mile Experts. Marek Różycki, thanks for being part of the Last Mile Profits today.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everyone.